Hi-ho, this is Dr. Jimmy yet again. It's still Saturday, the 1st of September. Yes, and I just did a video about what happened this past week, Monday, in reference to the revelation of the maze Insidious Beyond the Further in Hollywood, and also caught up with Universal Studios Singapore's Halloween Horror Nights 7 in the past week. So, this video is going to be about Orlando primarily, although we'll touch a little bit on Hollywood as well. In this video we'll talk about the revelations that have come up starting on Tuesday and then throughout the week for the new stuff that's happening, new revelations for Halloween Horror Nights 27, or perhaps I should say Universal Orlando Halloween Horror Nights 2017, the Festival of the Deadliest, or as I like to call it, Deadite Festivus. Yes, have feats of strength and air grievances. God knows we do that on Twitter every day about Horror Nights. Oh, why do they have the Purge when we should have had something else because we have a Purge scare zone? I'll get to that in a minute. All the other grievances. Aluminum poles, I'm sure there'll be a few of those. And, of course, Deadite Festivus miracles, like when you read from a book and you get possessed. That's a Deadite Festival miracle. All right, so let's move on then. Tuesday, that was this past week. Tuesday, what frickin' day of the week was that? I mean, it was a Tuesday, but it was August 29th, I believe, yes. On that day, the next big revelations for Halloween Horror Nights took place. Boom! When we got the revelation for the 5th haunted house in Orlando. Yes, because they gave the maze for Hollywood on Monday. There was only one maze left for Hollywood, but there was still 5 mazes left in Orlando. We hadn't, I should say houses. That's right, Maze Hollywood, House Orlando. Maze Japan, House Singapore. Why? I don't know. I don't know. It was mazes in Orlando, by the way, from Fright Nights all the way up to 1999 with Last Gasp. They called them mazes, and you look at the brochures, they say mazes. It started with 2000, you know. That's when they first, and the brochure said haunted houses, and ever since then it's been haunted houses. Although I understand the people who work in art and design who make the things still call them mazes. But for whatever reason, they're promoted as haunted houses in Orlando since the 21st century began. So 17 years have been called houses here. They're only known as mazes in Hollywood. In Japan, they're called horror mazes, not haunted mazes. And in Singapore, it's haunted houses, just like in Orlando. Who knows why? But the 5th haunted house was announced at last, and also an intellectual property. Now, amusing aside. Many years ago, I don't remember exactly what year, I think it was maybe 2004, 2005. I can check it out. That means I'm going to have to stop for a second here just to bring up my smartphone and just type in. And, oh, it was 2007. Okay, so 10 years ago, for 1 decade, there's been a new film production company. It's not a studio, mind, it's a production company. They don't release the things themselves. Other studios have to release their films. But this film company debuted with a film called Paranormal Activity. And it became suddenly a name in the horror genre, because for the past 10 years they've released lots of movies. The vast majority, I'd say like 97, maybe 98% of all their films have been horror films or thrillers. I think they had one ridiculous comedy, but most of it's been horror movies. So they become a horror movie film production company. And there haven't been that many film production companies that are specifically horror movie, oriented like this. Universal, started, kind of got a name for horror in the 30s and 40s, but they still released a lot of other stuff. In the 60s, 50s, late 50s, 60s, and 70s, Hammer Films got a name as a horror company. Most of their stuff was horror. There have been a few others like that. But this one suddenly got a name for itself and became sort of the new, modern, 21st century horror icon in and of itself. And when they release a movie, it's like, oh good, another horror movie, what fun. And it's new, trendy, kind of edgy stuff they do. Paranormal Activity was their first big franchise. but they also did the Insidious movies and the Purge movies and Ouija, or Ouija, however you want to pronounce it. It should be Ouija because it's from the word for yes in French and the word for yes in German, oui-ja, or oui-ja if you make it a J sound instead of a Y. But everyone says Ouija, so that's what we have to put up with. Lots and lots and lots of other things. All kinds of movies. Get Out! That was a big one this year. And there was the one with James McAvoy as a really, really demented multiple personality monster. What was it called? Split. Yes, a whole bunch of movies they've released, and I can't even begin to list them all, but they're doing quite well, and they've got a huge fan base already just from this production company. And for years I thought the name of the company was Blumhouse Productions, and the man who founded, of course, Jason Blum, because B-L-U-M is a German name that's pronounced Blum, and it is the German word for flower. You know, I think it's a Jewish name. And you have like Blumenfeld, or Rosenblum, you know, pink flower, or rose blossom, or whatever you want to call it. Blumenfield of flowers, Blumenfeld, or Blumenthal, all these nice names, just like that, the sort of names you expect. So I thought it was Blum. But and some people with that name came to America and landed at Ellis Island, and when they said, "My name is Blum, I'm Herr Blum," and the guy there said, "Yeah, Blum, B-L-O-O-M." What? I guess I have to spell that way now in America. Okay, and so their names are spelled B-L-O-O-M, like the way we spell the word Blum. But in some cases, they may have handed over their name and showed B-L-U-M. See, that is my name. And, okay, your name is Blum. What? I guess in America you have to say that Blum now. Okay, so I'm Blum now. And that's what happened to Jason Blum's great-great-grandparents, or whoever came over on the boat from Germany, because his name isn't pronounced Blum, like you'd expect it to be if you know anything about German names, but pronounced Blum. Rhymes with plum, or chum, or rum. Yeah, Blum. And the name of the company is Blumhouse. So for 10 freaking years, I've been calling it Blumhouse when I should have been calling it Blumhouse. And his name is Jason Blum. I just didn't know it because I never heard anybody say it out loud. You know, because they don't say it out loud in the movie. You just see it printed up there. And, you know, he's not like an actor who'll be doing interviews on all the chat shows. No. So I just thought it was Blum, but it was Blum. And I didn't find this out till Tuesday because he was in the announcement video himself. "Hello, I'm Jason Blum." And it's like, Blum? Oh, I've been wrong for a whole decade. So yeah, so Blumhouse Productions is the name of the company. All right, so that's what the house is going to be. It was announced on Tuesday. The fifth house, it's an IP house, actually it's 3-in-1 IP house, is called The Horrors of Blumhouse. Not the Blumhouse of Horrors, as some people thought it might be, but The Horrors of Blumhouse. And this will be a haunted house for Orlando, which I believe is going in that tent over by Men in Black. In fact, we know it's going to go there, and I'll get to that in a moment. And it will also be in Hollywood as a maze. So it was not just an announcement for the fifth house in Orlando, but also the 8th and final maze for Horror Nights in Hollywood. There, got it right this time. So there it was, The Horrors of Blumhouse. But they're not identical, because they each have 3, but they're not the same 3. The one in Orlando features... Well, let's do the one in Hollywood first. The one in Hollywood, of course, features 3 different properties from Blumhouse. The first is The Purge. Apparently from all 3 Purge films, or maybe just the first one, I'm not certain. And of course, it's very good they've got The Purge, because they don't have any other Purge going on in Hollywood this year. They did a Purge Scare Zone last year for election year, but this year all the scared streets are originals. So this is the first time they've had Purge in a house ever in Hollywood. So they're doing a Purge house for the first time. It's part of, you know, a three-part-type house, three-part-type maze, I should say, and it looks like a movie cinema house. You go in there. This might be the one where Murdy gets to play, you know, an old-fashioned horror host, but it looks like an old movie house, a cinema that's showing these Blumhouse movies. So that's what that facade is. And you go in there and you see the Purge, and the second one is Sinister, which has not been to Horror Nights ever before. Sinister, of course, that wonderful series. There's two films, actually, Sinister, Sinister 2, and they deal with an ancient demon called Bagul. Yes, Bagul, the boogeyman, Mr. Boogie, and he preys on the spirits of children. But what he does is very sinister. He finds a house with some kids, and he focuses on one of the kids and sort of possesses them a bit slowly over a bit of time, getting the kid into his will, and the kid then goes out and slaughters his whole family, including his parents, in nasty ways, making sure to film it so it gets seen by the next kid. And it's really quite creepy if you have children. Parents would be terrified by this movie, and if you live in a house with lots of kids, you might be scared because one of your siblings, or maybe your nephew, or someone, you know. But if you are a person like myself who has no kids and never intends to have kids and never intends to ever be anywhere near kids, you know, I might visit, you know, my sister and say hello to her kids, but I'm not going to, you know, I don't intend to, like, live there. So, yeah, it doesn't bother me so much because I'm never going to be in a position where Bagul will get me. You know, it's like being a virgin in one of those slasher movies. You know you're safe. Sorry, Jason's not going to kill me because I don't drink or smoke or have premarital sex. It's even better if you're a virgin teenage girl. You know you're going to survive the movie. They might chase you a lot and kill all your friends, but you're going to survive. Same thing, if you have no children, you're not going to worry about getting killed by your own kids in a Sinister movie. So, but that's what's happening. Sinister will be there. There's really creepy stuff in those movies, so it should be really wonderful. And the third one in Hollywood is Happy Death Day, and that's the brand new film that comes out next month, and it's sort of like a slasher film, and it's also like Groundhog Day, you know, but not a comedy. So a girl wakes up one morning and goes about her day at her college, and before the night is over, she's murdered by a mass slasher with a sort of baby face mask, kind of, you know, and baby face killer stabs her to death, and she's dead. But then what happens? Is she stay dead? No, she wakes up. Oh, back in her bed. It's the same morning. She gets to live the whole day over again. But she says, oh, I'm not going to get murdered this time, and she tries to avoid the situation where she got murdered the previous day, or the previous time. But the killer gets her anyway. So she wakes up. She's in a serious Groundhog Day time loop, and every time she wakes up, she's got to figure out how not to get killed. But she keeps getting killed. No matter what she tries to do, the babyface killer finds her and murders her again. And she wakes up and keeps going over and over, caught in this endless repetition. She finally has to figure out how to solve her own murder before it happens, and figure out who the killer is and stop them before she gets murdered again, so she can break out of the time loop and continue with her own life after being murdered several times already. So that's an interesting twist on the mad slasher movie. There was another movie a few years ago with a similar theme, except it didn't involve slashers. So this one sounds a lot of fun. So that's going to be the third film in the Blumhouse maze in Hollywood. A little bit of a preview because it doesn't come out till October. So when the maze opens in 2 weeks from today, you'll get a little preview of Happy Death Day as well as the other two. And hopefully, you know, cross-corporate synergy, it might get people excited and go see the movie, right? So that's what they're doing in Hollywood. And it's sensible. It makes sense. We go to Orlando. They're doing Blumhouse, but they have Sinister, yes, and just like in Hollywood, and they have another different one, what they don't have in Hollywood, because in Hollywood, Insidious is a major Blumhouse franchise, yes? and they have a whole Insidious maze. So of course they didn't put Insidious in the Blumhouse maze, because that would be stupid. It would be redundant. It would be silly. Why would they have Insidious when they have a whole separate maze just for Insidious? Why would they put it in the Blumhouse maze too? They didn't. So they have Purge, Happy Death Day, and Sinister. Well, in Orlando, we don't have a Sinister haunted house. We don't have a separate Insidious one, so they put Insidious into the Blumhouse one instead. So we have Sinister and Insidious. And so Insidious will just be a few scenes, but it will also heavily feature Insidious Chapter 4, just like the maze in Hollywood. So we will be seeing some previews of Insidious Chapter 4, as well as some scenes from the first 3 Insidious, as part of our Horrors of Blumhouse house here in Orlando. So we have Sinister and Insidious, just like that. But the third one, and this is where things don't make as much sense, because it made sense in Hollywood not to put Insidious into Blumhouse because they had a whole separate maze. It would make sense in Orlando not to have the Purge, which is in Hollywood's maze, in our haunted house, because we have a whole Purge scare zone taking up all of New York Street. So why would we need Purge in a house as well? Especially since we not only had another Purge scare zone 2 years in 2014, but we had a whole Purge haunted house back in 2015. I mean, we don't need Purge in a haunted house this year, do we? Apparently we do, because they're putting Purge in as the third one in Orlando. Why? It seems redundant. It doesn't make sense. I mean, they're smart enough in Hollywood not to have Insidious in the Blumhouse. Why are we having Purge in our Blumhouse when we have a whole Purge scare zone as well? It would make much more sense, and it's not an issue of did they get the rights to a different Blumhouse thing, because you know Blumhouse pictures do get released by different studios, so we might not have gotten the rights to something else, and so we had to do the Purge. Okay, I understand that, and I heard that they were thinking of using Ouija, but wouldn't it make sense, since we do have the rights to Happy Death Day, otherwise they couldn't have it in the maze in Hollywood, to do that as our third feature in the Blumhouse in Orlando? That way, the Hollywood would be Sinister, Happy Death Day, and The Purge, and Orlando would be Sinister, Happy Death Day, and Insidious. That would make sense. I don't know why they didn't use Happy Death Day, but they went with The Purge. So we've got Purge in the house, and apparently it's only going to be the first movie, because most of the second and third films are like outdoor scenes. They might have a bit of anarchy and election year in that, I don't know. I'm sure that it'll be in the streets, but it might be more like the first Purge film. But anyway, that's what we're having in the Blumhouse. The Horrors of Blumhouse house in Orlando will be Purge, Sinister, and Insidious. Again, I don't get it. I just don't get it, but that's what they did. Oh, product placement. Coca-Cola Zero Sugar, which is the new one. They no longer make Coca-Cola Zero, and my Publix, I used the last one up, and now I have to go to this. And it tastes fine. It tastes a bit more like old-fashioned Coke, actually. Damn sight better than Diet Coke, so I have no problems with it. It might be a little sweeter. Doesn't taste like that damn new Coke they did back in the 80s that sucked and no one hated it. I'm not going to miss Coke Zero so much. This is all right. So, now I said that this is located in the Clearview tent by Men in Black, and we know that for a fact because right the same day they started working on the facade, and people saw a guy actually painting, and this facade looks, goes in this way, like the concave, angular going into a corner, just like the Blumhouse logo with Horrors of Blumhouse. They started painting that in stenciling in the name of the house right on the facade. And one guy on the internet said, I'm not going to show any pictures because I don't peek over fences and peek over bushes, but only stuff that it can be seen in the park. This can be seen in the damn park. If you're over the entrance of Men in Black and just look over that way, there is a hedge, but it's a short hedge, and there's a fence, but the fence is not as tall as the facade sticks up over it, and the guy's on a ladder painting Horrors of Blumhouse, and everybody standing over by Men in Black can see what he's doing. That's how they got the picture. The guy who took the picture didn't sneak in backstage at all, just took it from an on-stage guest area. So that's legit. I'm sorry. It's legit. The picture's okay. But yeah, we got to see that. So that's actually, that confirms that location. People have come up with maps now saying where all the haunted houses are. I hope they're accurate. I don't know if they're accurate, but they claim to be. I guess they have their sources. I don't do that anymore, so I really don't know. But that one seems to be pretty damn certain, because it actually, you can see it written on the building itself. The building out there. Okay, that's got to be it then. Pretty obvious. Excuse me. Also, of course, after that, we got, on Thursday, finally, all the remaining haunted houses for Orlando. The 4 original houses, and they were revealed rather interestingly. First thing in the morning, yesterday, there was a USA Today newspaper article, and I got to see it online. It talked about the original houses, told them what they are, gave the names, some of the information, lots of lovely photos. Okay, the night before, Wednesday night, they showed some more teaser pictures on Twitter. Ooh, what are these supposed to be? Some are from original, some are from other houses, because there was like a hedge maze diagram from The Shining and some other pictures. So they were teasing us like crazy. But then Thursday morning, and before the day is over, all the announcements were made. Lovely videos seen online, stuff on the blog, stuff you could look up, the updated stuff on the Universal Orlando Resort website, as well as, of course, Halloween Horror Nights, giving logos and everything else. So now we know what the 4 original houses are. And if you haven't looked already, the 4 original houses first is called Dead Waters, and this is a sequel to the Scare Zone Bayou of Blood. It's in the Louisiana swamps. You go in, there's an enormous Mississippi paddle boat sinking into the bayou, and you get to go through there, I guess, and it's supposed to kind of be tilted like, you know, the Forsaken, and the ground is all marshy and soft, so it's going to be hard to keep your balance, I suppose. And there are all sorts of voodoo scare actors, and yes, the Voodoo Queen is featured in the house. Now, many people thought she should have been the icon this year. They're giving her own house now, and we've seen her twice before. Bayou of Blood in 2014. She was also popped up in Icon's HHN in 2015, but they did not elevate her to icon status. She's still just the main character of a house. Oh well. But she's there, along with all of her followers and voodoo dolls and all kinds of wonderful voodoo stuff. Beautiful house from all the pictures I've seen, and of course the ceremonies, sacrifices, and you might get to be the sacrifice if you're not careful and don't get out of the house quickly. Then we go to the next one. This is called Scarecrow the Reaping. Yes, and as rumored, it takes place in an old abandoned farmhouse that's been derelict since the days of the Dust Bowl. And I guess they had farmed the land too much. That was the problem of the Dust Bowl. And the spirits of the land and the air and the wind and the dust are pissed by this environmental outrage, and they've raised spirits of vengeance in the form of evil scarecrows. And they're going to harvest you. Yes, I guess they're harvesting souls, maybe? Soul collectors, reapers, something like that. So we've got these evil scarecrows there. Next house is called The Fallen, and this one's located, I'll get to locations later. Fallen, this is set in a cathedral, beautiful, ornate, and catacombs, and we have clearly forces of good and evil, light and dark, in their endless battle, apocalypse, skies turn red, that sort of thing going on in there. You're caught in the middle between the forces of heaven and hell. They don't say heaven and hell. They're nowhere in the description with the word angel or demon mentioned, even though that's obviously what's happening. I had to laugh. Winged creatures representing evil and good are fighting each other, and you're caught in them. Winged creatures? Are they afraid to say angel or demon? I mean, we had a whole exorcist house last year. I mean, if people are going to complain for religious reasons, you think that would have done it. I mean, there was a priest beating up a little girl in the house. I mean, come on. You know, power of Christ compels you. Yeah, it can't get more religious than that. So I don't understand why they're so reluctant to use the word angel and demon, unless they're afraid that Dan Brown will sue them. But anyway, The Fallen features obviously angels and demons at war with each other, and we're caught in the middle of their apocalyptic battle between dark and light. The last original house is called Hive. It was listed as The Hive, but then we see the nice logo. It just says Hive. And more information came out as I searched throughout the day. The Hive is set in a creepy little town. Cary, Ohio, of course, yes. And there was like this rich, eccentric man that people don't know too much about. His name, I think, is Nicodemus Felling. And he bought this old mansion, and it's been on a hill over the whole town, and it's been empty since the 70s, and there's all kinds of rumors of it being haunted. And inside the house, though, is a whole coven of vampires, a hive of vampires, including creepy little kid vampires and women vampires. But their leader is this towering figure, probably Nicodemus Felling himself, who looks for all the world like Nosferatu. And we're told on the blog that this was inspired from movies that we might have seen back in the 70s and 80s, not giving any names. And they said it in the 1980s, I guess, to be really safe. But you know what? If you just change a couple names, like instead of saying the house at 19 Hemingway Lane, if you say the Marston House, and if you say the town isn't Cary, Ohio, but still a creepy, weird town with a bad reputation called, oh, I don't know, Jerusalem's Lot, maybe, and you know, and the vampire might be named Kurt Barlow instead of Nicholas Felling, and he looks like Nosferatu, and there's that creepy little boy vampire floating around, and oh my God, does that sound familiar? It's like what I call a secondary IP. In other words, it's unofficially inspired by, not actually adapted from. Don't sue us, please. We're just ripping you off. We're not actually making this, you know, Mr. King, don't sue, basically. But it's pretty much, let's say, Salem's Lot is to the Hive what, say, From Dusk Till Dawn was to Demon Cantina. You know, it's pretty clear. That's what's going on here. Yeah, this is what we call an unofficial inspiration type of haunted house, but it's obviously one particular IP in mind, even though it's not really that, because they're changing it and making it their own. But clearly, it's an homage, and I think that's okay. They should do an homage to a Tobe Hooper film, considering. Oh, so I'm glad actually to see that. So that's the 4 haunted houses, the 4 original haunted houses. Now, the maps have come up with people saying where they think they're going to be. I don't know how accurate these are, but they have American Horror Story in a big soundstage like last year, and The Shining, and The Fallen, and Dead Waters, all in those sound stages. They might be that. I don't know. I thought maybe that Dead Waters might be in the parade building, but apparently they're saying it's in a soundstage. I don't think any of this is official. This is not what Universal was saying, but it's people who think they know what's going on. Saw is supposed to be in the Shrek Theater this year. Ash vs. Evil Dead is supposed to be in the parade building. And of course we know for a fact Horrors of Blumhouse is in the tent. Has to be the MIB tent, because you can see it written on it. And, well, actually, there was an old-fashioned, old farm windmill scene through the trees by a sprung tent. So it's likely that, quite likely, that Scarecrow the Reaping is in a sprung tent, and very much the other sprung tent will be Hive. That's what they're currently saying. Also, kind of weird, they're saying that they're changing the queues so that there's only one queue out of Kid Zone going to the parade building. So just Ash vs. Evil Dead, and the other queues will be, both of them, supposedly, by Men in Black. So both sprung tent houses, you have to go that way instead of having one in Kids Zone and one over there. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what people have been saying, and maybe they know something. I don't know. Again, I don't get inside information anymore, so I don't know. But that's what the scuttlebutt currently has been with these maps they're showing where they'll be located. But we'll find out for sure because it's expected in the next couple of weeks a map will be published in the September team member guide or whatever it is they send out for information that they give guests. And they'll surely have a map there so that the guests will know, they can know what to tell guests if they ask them about the haunted houses. As we get closer to Horror Nights, which is coming up, of course, just 2 weeks. Alright, so since that time we've seen more construction in the streets. I actually went over to the park myself one day. I think, what was it, Tuesday? Wednesday? I forget what day. But I went over there, maybe it was Monday afternoon. But I went over there and checked it out for myself, and I got a really good view of the flying saucer. And they have there's a Cadillac, no, actually it's a Ford Fairlane crashed into a telephone pole, knocking it over by the flying saucer. But now they've added traffic light to that. So that's there now. They also have put in more bombs and trucks, and in the Purge area they put in a lot of big container units. They took them out, and only one's still there, but the school bus is there now. So the school bus has been seen this morning in the Purge. There's also a little set, like a little stage in Sting Alley for the Purge. That's interesting. They might do a little sort of show thing in Sting Alley, so that extends the Purge wider. Now in New York, that school bus is there, and I'm glad to see the school bus come back again, but I would have rather they used it for trick-or-treat. You know, they could have had it sinking into the lagoon. They wouldn't do that. That would wreck the bus, but it would be funny, wouldn't it? Because, you know, that's what happens to the bus in the movie. So have it like half in and half submerged, and then have the trick-or-treaters come out at the end of it. Oh, if only they could do that. That would have been hysterical. Drowned monster kids coming out of the school bus. Oh well, that's my imagination. But the school bus is there now, and they're putting up more stuff. There really isn't much going on in Hollywood or New York, but they did reveal some stuff for Hollywood yesterday as well. The 6th lockbox opened up at last. Actually, several have opened up in the past week. There was a video that had some stuff about Eli Roth's, behind the scenes of Eli Roth's commercial, and a little bit about something else. What the hell was that? I can't remember what I talked about. Did I mention the Eli Roth commercial in a previous video? That came up in the past week or two. That was fun, but I think I might have already mentioned it. But there was stuff on there. But the most recently, though, the most intriguing stuff, they finally revealed some scare actor designs for the Festival of the Deadliest Scare Zone in Hollywood. That was the most interesting, because you see the guys there, and there's facial applications of like skeleton-like masks, but they only cover the top half of the face, like bones with all the designs, and some with bits of flesh still attached. But apparently the bottom half of the mask is open, so you can see a human face. So these are going to be worn by the minions of Blood and Bone, who are like servants of the Grim Reapers, and they'll be around the scare zone. So, Blood and Bone, that sounds familiar. Oh yeah, isn't that like something they used to say back in Terra Cruentus in 2005? And Islands of Adventure, Tales of Terror. Is there some connection between the Terror Queen and Terra Cruentus and this whole Festival of the Deadliest? I don't know, Blood and Bone. But apparently they are going to gather victims for their leader, the Great Reaper called Bone. And so there's one like Supreme Reaper named Bone who's going to be in the scare zone, and it makes me wonder, was he supposed to be an icon? You know, we talked about the Voodoo Queen might have been an icon, but they didn't use her as such. Was Bone meant to be an icon originally, and they decided not to use him as an icon, but just a secondary character in a scare zone? We'll never know, probably, but this year we don't have an icon here. And there's also rumors about something like the repository coming back, but that's because they forgot to take the thing off the mobile site from last year. And so people were all excited about that last night, but it's like they didn't read the fine print. Obviously, they're not going to have something like that open on November 5th. because the event ends on November 4th. Duh. So that's not actually happening, and people were going crazy with the rumor last night, even though, you know, the repository, I don't think it's coming back. They might have something else maybe they haven't revealed yet, but no. No repository. Maybe a suppository, but not a repository. That would really be scary, wouldn't it? Make sure you insert all 6 keystones in the correct order. Ooh. How do you get them out again? That's the real trick. All right. So, I think that covers everything that's been revealed for Orlando in the past week. Blumhouse, the originals, construction, Festival of the Deadliest, all that stuff. Quite exciting. So, 2 weeks and we'll see it all.